Hello and thank you for tuning into this week's MacDesk Floor Report. I'm Rebecca Darsh from the Market Access Center, bringing you the very latest market action every Thursday from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. We are looking at light volumes and rangy price action, with the Dow blue chips trading higher by 27 points and the S&P up just over 2 on this last day of a holiday-shortened trading week and the last day of the quarter. Global markets were a mixed bag overnight, with the Shanghai Composite coming in lowest among the laggards and hitting a 3-month low on heavy volume. This amid concerns that a new round of tighter controls on investment products will negatively impact banking and financial services companies. Not surprisingly, financials were the biggest drag on the Shanghai index, down 5% overnight as a group. The Nikkei was also a laggard, down 1.3% on some unexpectedly low Japanese retail sales and some modest intraday strength in the yen, which sent stocks of major exporters lower, although we'll see if that continues ahead of next week's widely anticipated BOJ meeting. European stocks closed with modest gains on the whole, with the data coming in mixed. German retail sales were a slight but surprising beat, while jobless numbers were a slight but surprising miss. And Eurozone PMI came in a little worse than expected. Banks in Cyprus reopened to depositors for the first time since March 16th with a €300 limit on withdrawals, and the absence of any large-scale scenes of panic or chaos likely brought some assurance to European investors overnight. Here in the U.S., we had a higher than expected weekly jobless claims number, coming in at 357,000. This was higher than street consensus and a somewhat disturbing move past the 350K level. Some market observers are attributing to the impact of the federal budget sequester. A third estimate on Q4 GDP released at the same time showed growth of 0.4%, which was a little bit better than expected. Later this morning, we had a surprisingly bad Chicago PMI number for the month of March. The gauge of Chicago area manufacturing activity was expected to come in around 56.5, roughly in line with the prior reading and just above the north of 50 number indicating growth. Instead, we got a surprising pullback to 52.4, and this pulled the S&P briefly into the red. As we mentioned in the midday, we're seeing lighter volume carry over into the options market, with the VIX down 1.4% and back below a reading of 13. It's not a big bid for option protection today as we end the week on a very muted note. Here on the floor of the NYSE, however, we did have the pleasure of hosting another successful IPO this morning with Pinnacle Foods. These are the folks who bring you Duncan Hines and Birds Eye Foods, among many others. The 29 million share IPO priced at $20. That was the very top of the range and has seen a nice pop today, trading at $22.47 at last print. Taking a look at the action for next week, we will kick off the month of April on Monday with March data from Japan on official reserve assets and vehicle sales. The UK will release the Lloyd's Business Barometer for March, while the US session will bring the final read on the March market PMI, February construction spending, and March ISM manufacturing and prices paid. On Tuesday, we've got February average cash earnings for the Japanese labor market and March monetary base data. Australia's Reserve Bank will release its March cash target, that's due out overnight. Germany will release a string of March regional PMIs and CPIs, while the UK will release March PMI, February consumer credit and mortgage approvals, and M4 money supply. And the Eurozone February jobless rate will be out. US data is limited mostly to March auto sales. Wednesday, April 3rd, marks the release of China's non-manufacturing PMI for March. Again, that number is coming out overnight. Eurozone March CPI, UK March PMI, and several data points from the US will also be released. Weekly mortgage applications and the first of several key jobs numbers for the week will get underway with March ADP unemployment. And earnings will be out from Monsanto and ConAgra Foods. On Thursday, all eyes will be on the Japanese yen after the BOJ releases its first target rate under Kuroda's new governorship, along with weekly foreign stock and bond buying data. Australia will release February building approvals and retail sales. We've got some March PMI numbers from Italy, France, the UK, and the Eurozone, along with a Bank of England rate announcement and April asset purchase target. The US will release March challenger job cuts and weekly jobless claims data, and we'll end the week on a robust day of data releases, with the Bank of Japan getting things started with the release of its monthly economic report, and separately, a February index of coincident indicators. February Eurozone retail sales and German factory orders for February may move European markets. Canada will release its February international merchandise trade data, along with the widely followed IV Purchasing Managers Index for March and some March unemployment data. And ahead of the US Open, we've got the March change in non-farm payrolls to watch. We're coming off a reading of 236,000 new payrolls for February. Consensus calls for March to come in a little lighter at 190K. We'll be watching the action in SPY weekly options ahead of that key jobs number and the rest of the market action. So keep an eye on your inbox for the midday and be sure to tune in next week for the next MacDesk Floor Report.